Hello everyone, and welcome back to Warships Blitz with Terry. Today, given that it has been very quiet on the new ship front recently, there is a chance for me to complete some of the review lines that I haven't really gotten to, and today we are looking at the Tier 10 light cruiser in the Italian tech tree line, the Attilio Regolo. Yes, you know, I'm not even being facetious about this. This was literally called a light cruiser in most references that you find. The Italians called these. This was the Capitani Romani class, so Roman captains, so named after Roman captains in the antiquity, and they called these ocean explorers. I think I'm probably going to mispronounce this. Esploratori, oceani, something like that. And they were, well, in most English literature that I found, they were called scout cruisers, or literally just being renamed as, or being named as, classified as light cruisers. So these ships were meant to. There was a bit of a one-upmanship with the French, and they were meant to one-up the French large destroyer leaders. And were really just almost stepping into cruiser territory from in terms of their size. A very good description that I found somewhere was that these ships were basically one massive engine surrounded by no armor and a couple of guns and torpedoes. So a very Italian sort of thing to do. In cliche like sports cars and stuff. So. This ship was actually constructed, which is very unusual for a Tier 10. But yes, this light cruiser actually existed. And she didn't get an awful lot. She didn't get to do an awful lot because she did get most of her bow section blown off by HMS Unruffled, which sent me into a laughing fit when I read that, because only the British can come up with the name Unruffled for one of their ships. But it did that, and she was sent back for repairs, and then relatively soon after that, the Italians actually signed the armistice, which means she was handed over to the French, which immediately renamed her to Chateau Renaud, and kept her around until the 1960s when she was decommissioned. So this is one of the rare Tier 10 ships that actually existed in reality and not just on paper. Now, the other reason that I'm saying this is a light cruiser is because, well, it really is. So if we compare her to her predecessor, once that loads, the Adriatico, then a couple of things will stand out. Anyway, we'll go through the stats first. It's basically the exact same ship skills. You just get an extra smoke. She does get significantly more hit points. And she is actually faster, like I said. One big engine with a little bit of ship around. But her maneuverability is starting to stray very distinctly into cruiser territory. Up to Tier 9, the Italians have kind of kept that sweet spot between the French scout cruisers and the actual destroyers. They were on the sluggish side a little bit, but they were fast, they were fun, you zip around and do things. This is a little bit more difficult at Tier 10 because you are now almost at a 5-second turn time, and the traverse speed is a bit less, the acceleration is a bit less, and the top speed's better, which is good. But if you're looking at if you're comparing the two ships physically, it is noticeably chunkier. This ship is relatively high up in the water compared even to her predecessor, which was already a relatively large ship, and is eating an enormous amount of damage from anything that shoots at it. But let's keep going. So, the guns are, for all intents and purposes, identical. We just get an extra turret, same reload, slightly better range, but still not an awful lot. And the damage is a little bit better. still the 4% fire chance on these. And yes, you do get semi-armor piercing, even though we don't get to see the actual to see that in the comparison. The torpedoes have a bit better range and hit a little bit harder and have a slightly better chance of flooding, but you still get 2 quad launchers. The AA is inconsequential as usual, and the surface detection is very firmly already in cruiser territory. So this sort of leads to an interesting question, because if this is a cruiser, you have an actual problem with gun range. However, if this is a destroyer, you do have a bit of a maneuverability problem, because if you look at it from the front, it's exactly the same as this. It's got 2 gun turrets forward. The temptation to get the additional turrets on target means that you do need to give a bit more broadside than is good for you. And the torpedo angles are not great either. So even for predictive torps, you actually have to turn a ship around a fair amount to get them off. Which leads, like I said, to the question, do you play this as a cruiser? In which case you could be tempted to say, well, it's a good gunship. Yes, but it's got a 7-kilometer range. And it's large enough to be almost one-shot by Christopher Columbus and similar things. Or probably actually one-shot by those. The alternative would be to play it as a stealthy destroyer, which is also difficult because that thing's got a 7.2 kilometer base detection range. So this is one of those interesting cases where I feel that, at least that was kind of my initial feeling, the Tier 9 is actually better than the Tier 10. But let's go through the details and see some games, and then we will talk about this in more depth. For starters, you get the choice between torpedo reload and gun reload. Honestly, given that, gun reload's probably what you want. The torpedo reload is already very good, so a 3% reduction there is not going to make any kind of really significant difference. I would definitely go for the guns, because that also gives you a bit of traverse speed, which you don't really need on the torpedoes. The camouflage I've selected here is again the Spicy Beans camouflage that is currently, I believe, in the shipyard. So if you have that bundle, you get it for both the Tier 9 and the Tier 10. And generally, I would have said, the Tier 9 one's a bit of a waste. Who wants a historical camo on a Tier 9 destroyer? The Tier 9 destroyer is good. And I am still pretty much tempted to say that the Tier 9 is actually a bit better than this one. Even though it's a Tier 9, and it does get into Tier 10 games, but it also gets into Tier 8 games. Again, the difference between these two is the range versus speed. Now, the argument has been made that range is better, because these things have a very, very long torpedo range. I'm not sure. I think both of them are not massively consequential, but I actually prefer the speed, just because it makes avoiding them a little harder, because it reduces the time between you spot the torpedoes and you being hit by the torpedoes. So I personally prefer the speed. I think the range is long enough as it is. And if you're relying to hit things at max range and you need more range, just get closer. But this is yet another discussion when we're looking at the actual build for this ship. In terms of which, you will notice that it is exactly the same build I did on the Tier 9. And I think in slot 1, you can have 2 choices. You can have either go for the main battery mod 2 for reload and get faster gun reload, which is what I personally do. You're not going to lose turrets an awful lot. I haven't really had issues with that at all, so the reduced survivability is really not a problem. Or you could go with the traverse speed, because the traverse speed is a bit on the long side, and getting the turrets to swing around can be a little tedious. Slot 2, I personally prefer propulsion, always, in destroyers, in most things, really. It's really rare that I go double steering. But you could also argue to use steering here, just to deal with the rudder shift that starts being on the sluggish side. So we're starting to get into British light cruiser territory here with the rudder shift. Now, this is where the contentious third slot comes in. So either you can accept that you're a cruiser and basically say, okay, I'll just be spotted, But in return, I either get rudder shift or I'm getting speed. Speed is sort of a legit choice here, probably as well, especially with preheating, engine boost, and everything else. You get off the ground very, very quickly, and you can throw off people's aim occasionally. The big problem I have with this is the gun range, because this is a gunboat. It has very, very good guns, and it'd be a shame not to use them. Now, the problem is, if you're not using concealment, let's have a brief look at the stats. With concealment, you have a gun range of almost 8 kilometers and a surface detection of 6 kilometers, which means you can comfortably get within 6 odd kilometers range before you start opening up against, for example, enemy destroyers, which comes as a really nasty surprise because these things hit really hard and you have a reload booster. Whereas if you use speed or rudder shift here, you'd end up with a 7.2 kilometer surface detection minus whatever the camo does, which means pretty much you'll be spotted as soon as you're in gun range, more or less. And while it is possible to do that, that would be the more cruisery playstyle. The problem is you have to fight at 8 kilometers and you will be really, really hard pressed. I think they're both legit setups. I think how I set her up here is the more versatile style, because you can sort of compensate for if you're running low on hit points, you can literally just stop firing your guns and be a torpedo boat for a while. Whereas without the concealment, that is noticeably harder because A, you're being spotted more easily, and B, you can't get quite as close to get your torpedoes away. The alternative of being, just don't lose your hit points that quickly by buffing speed and or steering, it's valid. I personally don't like it quite as much. I've tried it out and playing more as a cruiser, but it's it feels quite. It's just an issue with the gun range, right? It feels like a more high risk, more damaging play style, which really, really needs the enemy team to not pay any attention to you to be successful. And I prefer something that does not rely on the enemy team to give you opportunities to make that work. So we'll do something slightly different today. For the first time ever, I will actually have 2 battles with different setups. The first setup is going to be this one. So I have a commander here and just a relatively straightforward setup, level 10 commander because it's a tier 10 ship. And he does get the master reloader skill, obviously, for the rapid reload. I have decided not to use the fire supremacy, but to get daredevil instead. Contentious, I know. But I do like to play ships aggressively, and if I am in the situation that I am in relatively low hit points and I need to get myself out of there, then I can rely on significantly increased traverse and rudder shift. It's not just the rudder shift, it's also the traverse of the ship itself that gets improved. So when you're on low health, you're becoming quite a bit more maneuverable at the sacrifice of one extra rapid reload. And the Mistweaver and the Engine Overload are here because of the cooldown, not so much of the duration of these skills, because they are the very short duration, short cooldown things. The second, now I'm going to have to find, the second battle is going to be played with this commander and with premium consumables. Although, to be honest, I don't think premium consumables make all that much of a difference. But I did want to say, what if you throw everything at it and have a fully decked out premium commander? Now, there are actually a couple of commanders that might work reasonably well, and I have to figure out which one it was. Like this one, for example. He gives you an extra smoke and an extra engine accelerator. The torpedo reload is not useful for you, but that's kind of nice to have. He's got the semi-armor piercing buff for penetration, which is nice against destroyers or battleship bows. He's got the improved preheating. He's got the improved daredevil, and he's got an improved adrenaline rush, which is a nice skill as well if you don't want to go for a cooldown on the Mistweaver. So that would totally be a valid choice. I'm not so sure about this one. Yeah, it would work too, right? I mean, horizontal protection expert doesn't make an awful lot of sense for this ship, but everything else kind of checks out as well. Well, he's probably more for the battleships, but you still get the Adrenaline Rush Plus, which makes sense. You still get the Daredevil, which makes sense. And you could even sail with Sansonetti, to be honest, because the Sixth Sense is a super valuable skill as well. Obviously, the Marksman doesn't make sense here, but you still also get the semi-armor piercing extra skill. So there's definitely a lot of choice, but I think out of all of that, this commander is probably the best one. You get an improved steering gear repair and power system repair. So if you get your rudder shot off, okay, I'll take it. You do get a much improved torpedo detection, which is actually pretty good if you are fighting enemy destroyers, because you don't have a sonar. You get to see the torpedoes a lot earlier. You do get the improved Mistweaver. Okay, we'll take it. We get the Engine Overload Plus, which means your cooldown is now half. And you get both the semi-armor piercing pen and the Giant Hunter Plus, which does, I think, an extra % on the torpedo damage. But yeah, it's I think that's probably, well, at least that's the one I've picked. So that's going to be the second game. And in the first game, we're going to play on the standard setup. So you see if it makes any noticeable difference. And just, you know, as an indication of, do I really need a legendary commander to be successful in this ship or not? All right, have I forgotten anything? I think I have not. So let's go and see 2 games. The first round, this is with the standard setup, so regular captain, not premium consumables, is going to be played on Haunted Seas in domination mode. And we are fighting Monty, Republik, Jinan, Nevsky, Double Shima, and Gearing. Off we go. Against destroyers, yes, these you've got 8 guns, you've got a under 5-second base reload, and you've got a reload booster. That's what I'm trying to say. So you are dangerous, but be aware of your lack of maneuverability. All right, anyway, off we go towards Sea Cup. Let's see what we've got with us here. Engine boost up for what it's worth, and we do over 50 knots with preheating and everything else. So we are a little bit faster, but you see the torpedo angles. I do want to drop predictive torpedoes into that gap there, because that's where the enemy team's going to be. I know that. And you have an over 10 kilometer torpedo range, but I do need to turn the ship around quite a bit to make that happen, which means I'll drop speed, which means I'm dropping the kind of the early cup advantage. But I do want to get the torpedoes away early so that they're already reloaded by the time I'm getting there. Okay, I've got Shimakaze with me and some form of cruiser. It's a Jinan, okay. Right, here we are. And nobody's in the cup because we're capping. Well, I mean, it might be one in the cup, but so far nothing's in the cup by the looks of it. That is contesting us. There is something battleshipy. Oh, there's the Shima. Yep, he took one. Hello, Mr. Shima. So, and there's the Gearing as well. Okay, so there were 2 of them in the cup, but because both me and Shima were here. And immediately I am taking significant amount of damage from the fire from that Nevsky back there, plus the 2 destroyers opening up at me. So the torpedoes are already reloaded. There comes some Shima torps, and that means Shima is pretty... there come the Gearing torps as well, so that means these guys are not particularly useful. G9, you know you have deep waters, right? They can't hurt destroyers. So, okay, so these guys decide not wanting to come around the other side either. And but it looks like, oh yeah, Gearing just took some torps, so Shima is now pretty much out, and there's a Nevsky out there, so I'm gonna go in and take down that Gearing if I can, because he doesn't see me because he's in his smoke, and he thinks he's safe. He thinks I can't hurt him. Smoke screens, yes, they are torpedo magnets, but they also you can just follow the tracers back and you know where they are. I can see you, you know. There we go. Okay, so that thing's dead. Had to ink up a little bit here to protect myself from that Nevsky's incoming fire. Fortunately, he is firing high explosive at me. Nevsky, HE Nevsky's is always a good thing. And now he can't see me no more, so torpedoes in his general direction, and then we're going around the other side, because we are focusing quite a lot of ships here, and the friendly team on the other side is going to have their work cut out for them. There is still Shima out there somewhere, so Jinan, you may want to be careful. There is a Shima out there somewhere. Oh, yeah, there he is, full on reverse. and shots out, and that should be an X-streamer. Yeah. And yes, that's why I'm running the propulsion mod, because otherwise I would have been a very, very dead scout cruiser. Okay, you guys can deal with the Nevsky, right? There's a Jinan out there as well. That is not a thing that I necessarily usually want to take on in the destroyer. The thing is, the Jinan doesn't have any armor either, so the semi-armor piercing might actually be able to do a little bit of damage against that thing. And he's got deep water torpedoes, so he can't hurt me. Whereas my torpedoes are almost reloaded, but he is in the turn, so there's no use right now torpedoing him. Also, by the time my torpedoes are going to get there, he's probably going to be dead, and there are some torpedoes coming. He can be hurt by deep waters very much, so the friendly Jinan he has got the torpedoes out and has got the good sense of using armor piercing, and that's a dead Jinan. Okay, friendly Jinan takes him out with AP. That means the enemy team's already down to 3 ships. So I was going to say, well done, and I tapped the wrong button, but it looked like the friendly team did not really need any assistance around. There we go. Did not really need any assistance around the other caps, because they've also been massacring everything over here. Which means we just have, let's see what's left there. We just have we can switch to the high explosive. Yeah, we've got a Monty over there, which is significantly running out of friends right now. Now, I am not in gun range, I am in torpedo range, but the Monty is heading away and looks like he might be turning, so firing the torpedoes now would be completely pointless. We'll have to wait for him to complete his turn. The enemy destroyer around here has been killed, and the Monty is now coming under fire from everybody. So yeah, that battle is pretty much over. So compared to, while we're trying to kill the Monty, compared to the Tier 9, like I said, you've got an extra gun turret, which is great, but you are a cruiser. You do have to really take care, and the ship is very high in the water, which means it does take an incredible amount of damage from enemy shells, because there's just so much ship to shoot at. And so let's just drop a little ahead, because the Monty is probably trying to dodge those higher torps, but he is going to take a whole bunch of them. Yeah. So it is very much more of a cruiser or a scout cruiser than it is a destroyer, and it feels a lot more French than than Italian, style that I had previously. It's not in that sweet spot anymore. While we are killing the Monty, it's not in that sweet spot anymore, where it has the maneuverability to just liberally zig and zag around, because if you get shot at, things get spicy very, very quickly. So we still came out on top of the team, interestingly enough. And even though we haven't done an awful lot of damage, but we have taken 2 of the capture circles, and that counts for something. And we've got 3 kills under our belt as well. So in the second round, this is with Legendary Captain and with the premium consumables. We are fighting Colombo, Double Monty, Iowa, Smolensk, Worcester, and Gearing. And we are in a scout cruiser. Yeah, about that. Colombo can probably one-shot us. Smolensk is an issue. Worcester is an obvious issue. And Gearing probably not so much, and I'm not super afraid of the Monties, but we'll see how it goes. This is where, again, it's a domination map, this time on Sea of Fortune. This is where I'm happy that I have the concealment, because there are a lot of things out there that can make my life very, very short and interesting indeed. Anyway, spawning around A Cup, full speed ahead, and we have somebody called Complainer on the team. Okay, then. So 51 knots go, and we're heading towards A Cup. Again, I do need to turn quite a bit to get my torpedoes away, but I do want the predictive torps away into that position there, because that's most likely where any enemy ships coming. I'm either up against the destroyer or one of the cruisers, I would expect, just from how our team is spawning. So we are heading into the capture circle. Not going to burn another engine boost right now. I'd rather have one to get away in case it's one of the cruisers, and especially the Worcester. And the Smolensk does have relatively good concealment, but oh no, there's the Gearing. Okay, it's the Gearing and Smolensk. Hello, Mr. Gearing. And he's not taking one, which is unfortunate, but he is now very much coming under fire. And he seems to be relatively oblivious to that fact, because he hasn't really been paying attention and he's giving full broadside. Yeah, that's Smolensk, I know, but he is now very dead. And yes, obviously. But Smolensk is firing high explosive at me, which is okay. And this is where I am somewhat happy that I can hopefully go undetected again in a minute. Now, do I want to shoot at that Monty? No, I don't want to shoot at that Monty, because I've got Smolensk after me. And most of my team is going that flank, which is completely unnecessary. Yep, that's the problem. That's exactly why I need to get unspotted. You seen that? That was my life flashing in front of my eyes. And this is where I would love to be a very, very stealthy ship. Because all these people, I want to stay out of Worcester's radar range for starters. And yeah, they're blind firing at me. You see that, right? They're all blind firing at me. So I'm not going to use my guns. I'm just going to drop some torpedoes into that conflagration of ships over there and see if we can hit something. And then we'll go for Sea Cap as well. And I was just going to go for the capture control, because yeah, that's a Worcester and a Cristoforo Colombo. If they unite their efforts, that spells problem for me. Unfortunately, it looks like they have dodged. No, they haven't dodged all my torpedoes. I've still got 3 hits in onto the Colombo. Colombo has excellent torpedo damage reduction, so I'm not really going to hurt him all that much. But my torpedoes reload very quickly. I get spotted, immediately smoke, because Colombo, and he doesn't really have anything else to shoot at. Get the heck out of here, and yes, there's a Monty. Okay, I'm sort of committed now, so hello. Ow, that was probably the Colombo, and he shot one of my torpedo launchers off. That's just plain rude. Yeah, no, that wasn't actually the Colombo, because that was the Colombo coming in. Must have been one of the other ones. But we've got a flood on the Monty. Otherwise, I would have gotten 2 torpedo loads in. But now we need to get the heck out of here and immediately smoke up again. Monty fortunately has the armor piercing loaded, otherwise I would have been dead right now and here. But he has Damacon, so we can use the rapid reload to try and maybe set a permafire, although it is a Montana. But we definitely need to get the heck out of here and make sure that that Cristoforo Colombo has something else to do rather than shoot at us. So run away! Bravely run away. And Montana has missed. But I am running out of hit points. I've lost one of my gun turrets, and it is now time to stop shooting things. So one more smoke, just to make sure I'm going undetected while turning. And yeah, that is what I was talking about. And we'll drop some torpedoes in the general direction of that Monty, where he might be going. And then wait for the torpedoes to reload, and maybe for the heel to come off cooldown. Because right now, I don't have enough hit points to do anything about here. But the rest of my team seems to have finally gotten tired of chasing. Well, the Smolensk is dead, but whatever they were doing around A Cup, where they were completely unnecessary, while I was fighting the entire enemy team over here. Oh, there's the Colombo. So we do want to stay out of... Who am I going for? Iowa or Colombo? Yeah. Colombo is coming around here. Okay, we don't want to go on that side of the island. He just fired, so he is now relatively harmless for a while, but I do want to see where he's going. Iowa is going to die anyway, so let's see if we can sink some more torpedoes. He is accelerating out of the turn, probably. We'll observe him a little bit longer, but it looks like he's coming this way, so torpedoes out at him, and then engine boost up and get the heck out of here before we get ourselves spotted. But again, because of the... Oh, I got spotted, smoke immediately, because of the concealment build. I can actually, yep, there comes that Colombo, really wants me dead. Because of the concealment build, I can actually get reasonably close and sink a couple more torpedoes into that Colombo. And, I mean, I can grab the last cap, but Colombo's the last ship alive, and it's yet another ruffle stomp. So, there we go. It does help to hold, to keep half the enemy team busy, or more than half of the enemy team busy, waiting for your teammates. So, this ship, it's, again, I think it took me a couple of rounds to get used to it. I think it's still a fun ship, but I personally actually prefer the Tier 9, I think. simply because of the better maneuverability and the fact that she does get into tier 8 games. And she can torpedo boat on tier 10 reasonably well as well. The extra gun turret is really nice, but most of the time, in order to actually get it to work, you do need to give an awful lot of broadside, which means that you are getting shot at by very, very unpleasant things. So, strictly speaking, in the tier 9, if you go bow in, you get 2/3 of your guns on target. In the tier 10, you only get half your guns on target. That is sort of, and the torpedo angles are not great. That is sort of the essence of the whole problem here for me. She's a bit better at kiting, but again, the low gun range doesn't really make that feasible either. So it's not a bad ship. It's still a fun ship. It's probably not a meta ship, and I still prefer building with concealment, just so that when you're running out of hit points, you can use your torpedoes quite effectively. Well, that's it for me today. Thanks, everybody, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.